Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Hello again. This is the All In Podcast with Nate Payo. Of course, I am your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined with Nick Marks. Nick was once described as a statistician with a soul because he has a unique combination of hard statistical skills and soft people skills. He draws on specific evidence to show everyone that benefits. He draws on specific evidence to show how everyone benefits when businesses take happiness seriously. Nick founded the Friday Pulse, an innovation tech business based in London, to be the catalyst in changing the world of work for the better. Welcome to the show, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so, the statistician with a soul, that's funny because it's usually people that are really into statistics are very numbers driven, and they not always relate to people on that. They're not usually defined as people, or are they?
I think that's kind of ended up being my sort of unique selling point in that I am a people person and I do numbers, or the other way around. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what the Friday Pulse is.
So Friday Pulse is something I've been developing over the last, specifically 2-3 years, but sort of draws on 5 years work before that, which is about, it's fairly obvious that I think we all know miserable people do miserable work. But the opposite is also true, that when people feel good at work, they do great work. And so it's how do you measure that, and how do you help organizations develop that in their teams and in their organizations? So that's what Friday Pulse is. And basically it's called Friday Pulse because on a Friday, we ask people how you felt at work this week. And, and the idea is that when people feel good, they do better work. But you need to know that as an organization, because if people are feeling bad, and obviously we've got quite a bit of that going on at the moment, then, then they need to know about it so they can act on it. So it's giving them interesting data, but it's also really in support of the employee.
I think that's a great observation because, like, in my past, any project that I was working on that I was like super excited and probably have said, hey, this was my most productive time period. This was the part where I had the most creative ideas and I accomplished the most and had the most fun doing it. It never really felt like work. It always felt like I was just like clowning around, goofing off, but we just did so much. And the whole dynamic of the team just was very enthusiastic. But I think it could all relate to those jobs that we've dreaded going to, that we feel sick to our stomach, that we have to go, work on projects we're not vested in. And it shows. I think our work effort shows that it's lacking when we don't have the right mindset.
It's totally true. And, I am a statistician and all the data supports that. And so it's in everyone's self-interest to think about this. But of course, so many managers or leaders are not people. They're promoted because they are good technically at their job, or even maybe just the most senior. And so we often end up working for people and with people who aren't sensitive like that. And it's how do we bring that sensitivity in without scaring people? And actually numbers are strangely helpful with that. So, yeah.
It's weird you say that. You're right. A lot of people are good producers of their individual outcomes, especially like when you're starting off in your career. Like you're kind of judged on how many things can you individually produce, and then you get promoted, and then you become a manager. And there's definitely a difference between a leader and a manager. And the manager has the title, but maybe they don't have the leadership. They're not identified as a leader, and they have to adapt, and they have to become more familiar with keeping other people engaged on their work, and also like realizing like, hey, it's not so much what you can do now, it's relying on what other people can accomplish for you, and motivating those people to feel productive at work, feel excited to come into work. And I think a manager can play a bigger impact in the company's culture than like the company of itself. You might say, oh, this is a great company to work for, but if you're stuck for a mediocre manager, you're not going to see the benefits of working at this great company either.
Yeah. Do you know where the word manager comes from?
I would sure like to hear it.
It's horsemanship. And so it came from managing a horse. And so that's not a good start, is it? That you're basically, how do you control a horse to what do you do? And that's the root of the word. But I think it is a nice distinction between manager and leader. And there's this old adage, isn't there, that, you join an organization and you leave a manager. Well, to me, you still left the organization because the organization hadn't been bothered to actually help managers be better at dealing with people. And so you're still leaving the organization because they haven't ensured that consistency across the organization. And what you normally find, so I look at data, and often senior leaders will say to me, we've got this great culture and this is what we look like. And I go, yeah, sure. And then, you look at the data, you've got lots of microcultures. Is the leader, is the manager in that area good or not good? And you see those hot and cold spots across the data. And that's really what our tool is about, is actually helping senior leaders, HR leaders get consistency across the organization, because everyone would prefer to work for a good people manager. Everyone would do better in that situation. So how do you get towards that? And what they tend to do is just throw training at it, but they don't actually look at the outcomes. And so that's how we help them do that. But the spirit behind it is that I don't think anyone wants to be a bad manager. Like we don't want to be a bad parent, but if we haven't been parented well, or we haven't been managed well before, we don't know what to do. And so it's actually, how do you help people do that? So we very much try to be on the side of the line manager because we want to support them to do a good job.
Okay. So this is an observation I've had, a personal observation is regarding around management training. And it's like you go in and you say, okay, here's what you can do as a manager. Here's like tasks, here's like a program. And sometimes I feel like, the corporations, they have a lot to choose from, and they have a lot of people working from them. So they're trying to find something that's, I don't know, aligns with company culture, but it also, is as broad as possible to hit as many people. And so you get it. And like I'll go take a management training course and go, this is stupid because that's not how I manage. And it's not in alignment with my personality and my values. Not like I'm like, hey, this is telling me to be a polite person and be empathetic, but like these tasks of how I work with people are different than I would normally do it. And like, if I said these things are not how I would say them. So like, how as a company can you get people, instead of following the playbook and essentially becoming a better manager, how can you get them to become a better leader or somebody that's more, inspiring to work for?
I mean, it's a big question, and I guess what we do is that we give constant little bits of feedback, and I think that we're all able to learn if we get good feedback. And so the way that we do is, because we ask every week, we actually ask people to also share what's a success for them, it's a frustration, and so we help the manager lead a team meeting on a Monday, which is basically where they get together. They see what were their results last week, what went well last week, and it helps them appreciate their team. Recognition is really, really important. And I don't mean financial, I mean purely human recognition, being thanked for doing a good job, that sort of thing. And also deal with any frustrations in real time. And actually, if you're building what's going well and you're dealing with frustrations and you're sensitively listening to your team and how they're feeling, I think you're being a good manager. So we build that into our platform that actually helps them do that. So that's the way I see it. But I mean, that's not to say that management training isn't good. It can be. I think with all training, it's better to give people choices about where they want to take their training. So, I mean, large organizations might have several things they can do, and you choose the one that specifically does. But I'm not in the training world, so I sometimes do trainings on how positive emotions, how building on those can help you be a better manager. But I don't do the broad management training, so I haven't been on one of those for a while.
Yeah. So you talk a little bit about on your website about feelings, and there hasn't been a time more like now when it's becoming more and more okay to discuss your feelings. Like, 30, 40 years ago, it was suck it up and do your job and don't have an opinion about something. If you don't like it, it's too bad. But nowadays, I think, happiness and mental health is playing a big factor in people, and being a person that says, hey, I'm not comfortable with the way I feel about this, or I want to discuss my feelings around things, is good as an individual to express, but also for the company. But a lot of people still feel challenged to speak up on how they feel. What's your role around that, and getting people to express themselves more?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different environments affect what is socially acceptable or socially useful, even not even acceptable, useful to express. We won't tend to get as, our intimate partner, we tend to express stronger feelings with than our boss. And that's in many ways appropriate, because, that they're different relationships. So we have feelings, and it's also, we have a choice about how we act on them. But it's when people sort of really suppress what they're feeling that they get into problems. And so things like burnout happen when people don't listen to how they're feeling. So they might be quite committed to their job and stretching themselves, but they're not listening that they're stressed, or the relationships are going wrong at work or whatever like that. And they just get themselves too stressed into whatever, and then they crack and crash and burn. And it can be, similar. We can be guilty of doing that in our personal lives with relationships. We let them trundle along too long, and then we snap. Whether that's a family member or a loved one or formerly loved one, whatever the situation is. But so it's actually, how do you deal with that in real time? Because the more that you can express, not every feeling you have, you don't want to be driven by your feelings. Your feelings, I sometimes talk about feelings as data, and by that I mean, yes, you can put a number on some bits of it, but I mean that they're information for you, but you don't have to blindly follow them. But they are useful information. And the issue really is, what is the feeling congruent with what we're experiencing now? Because sometimes we get angry when we're hungry, or we're thirsty, and so we've got a feeling, but we're actually misallocating that to someone else, whereas actually we just need to eat or drink or whatever it is we need to do. But that's a trivial example. Sometimes it comes crashing back from our past, that we've had a previous bad experience, and we bring that to now, and it's not actually helpful in the now. So you have to still examine your feelings. That's the route to awareness. The route to maturity is to listen to your feelings and then choose how you act. And that space, Viktor Frankl, who's a very famous sort of philosopher, I don't know if you've heard of him, who went through the Holocaust, he talked about the space between stimulus and response is my chance for growth. Mm-hmm. and that gap, and of course that's where people who we might think are wise or emotionally intelligent, they're very good at managing that gap. That they listen to what they're feeling and they do it, and that's a journey for nearly all of us. And we might be better in some contexts than others, but that really is the process. And so the first step is understanding what you feel, and then it's what you do with it.
Is that emotional intelligence something that can be learned, or is it just innate in people? Or, what does the data show you around that?
A combination. I mean, I think that there is a natural maturation process that goes on in human beings. We are much more spontaneous and driven by our emotions when we're younger. I mean, a toddler has no control over their emotions. They just express them. And then, a teen has different ones, and the brain. And there's a natural process, but of course, people are better at it than others. I mean, you can find old people who aren't emotionally intelligent, and you can find young people that are. And there is something about how much effort you put into it. I mean, I trained as a therapist when I was young. I didn't really work as a therapist for very long, but that 3-year training was life-changing for me, because you really had to examine everything about yourself, or as much as you could do. And that's become a lifelong journey for me. I've always returned to therapy when I've got myself in problems, and I have got myself in problems in life, like most other people. And I've gone to that reflective process of thinking, what have I done? Why have I done it? How useful was it? How can I, choose better next time? And that process of reflection I found very, very helpful. Some people do it through art, through music, through other ways of doing it. But I think that ability to reflect, put something outside of yourself, examine it, and move forward is helpful.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right on the money with the therapy analogy of going back and learning to think about the questions you're asking yourself of why you're not happy with the result. And especially as a manager and you're wanting to develop better emotional intelligence, you look at something and maybe somebody's not performing, and you could say, oh, there's something wrong with them. But if you start going, okay, well, what am I in control of, which is how I relate and react to the circumstances. And you start saying, okay, well, how could I make this, how could I bridge this gap between them and me better? Am I giving them enough resources? Am I reaching out and understanding what their needs and wants are? And how am I responding to what they put forth to me? So I think it's a challenge to do, because you have to put the effort in, as it starts with yourself, and you have to explore that first before you can really figure out what other people are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally it does. I think certainly the more self-aware you are as a person, the better leader you can be, better manager you are, because you don't mix your stuff with their stuff, and you're more available to them, and you more see them for who they are rather than through your own filter. So it's very helpful to do that. Yeah. Very
cool. So what would you say, referring back to your statistics background as well, what would be like an idea that a lot of people believe to be true, that the statistics would prove to be false?
Oh God! Well, there's so many ways that statistics can inform us. I was involved in a project early in my career when I was measuring local quality of life and well-being, and the local government I was working with, they were quite convinced that all the new people who came into town were much happier because they were more vibrant and more go ahead. And it turned out the people that lived in the town longer were happier because they had better social networks, they had better family, they had more security in the space and more sense of belonging. So, data keeps you honest, and it helps me. I mean, I'm a very lucky sort of privileged guy. I was born into a relatively wealthy family, educated well. I could have all sorts of biases, and actually by looking at data, I've come to really realize about how important we need to think about income inequality, how we need to think about people's different experiences. And so I love my data because it expands my vision of the world, my understanding of the world.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge factor is being exposed to different ideas and different outcomes and different points of view. And you're right, with the experiences we have shape our decisions, and they provide this bias. But when we look at the data, it can show you a different point of view, a different reference point, and you can start, investigating. A lot of times we always have this thing where if something goes wrong, well, what caused it? And it's just this like anecdotal story, and like you have to get into the weeds to find out the real answer. And the cause, at first glance, the cause might be similar, but you find out that they're very different because the data says, hey, this is what really happened. The outcome kind of looks the same, but the cause of it was a lot different. And you kind of weed through that sometimes.
You definitely have to, but it's also, there's ways that our brain plays tricks on us in that we misremember things.
That happens all the time.
And lots of ways that's to comfort ourselves. And that sometimes life is hard, and in some ways it's better to dismiss something as, as bad luck or whatever, rather than taking responsibility of it. And we're actually being gentle on ourselves. And, I sometimes wonder how much we should deal with these biases and how much we shouldn't. But there's a classic case of like optimists and pessimists applying to a college, and they're both rejected by the college. The pessimist will think it's because, the college was really good and they weren't quite good enough. The optimist will think, oh, well, the college was rubbish, I didn't want to go there anyway. And they'll rewrite the history to sort of make themselves feel better. And, and in some ways there's a logic to that. So the data sometimes can tell us, it's like the mirror doesn't lie in some ways, but, maybe we don't want to look in the mirror.
Yeah, that's a tough one to always do. So I have a question for you regarding the words all in. What does that mean to you with regards to being all in on an outcome or an idea?
So I am a kind of all in guy. And in fact, when I've got myself into problems in life, it's tended to be that I'm very optimistic, and I override negative signals, and I don't listen enough to maybe that there's some danger around, and I just go, so in that sense, there's a little bit of danger for me in the word all in, because I think sometimes it feels like we're not quite listening. I mean, I got myself involved in a personal relationship that went very wrong, and I should really have listened to signals much earlier on there, and it actually, by the time I got so deeply into it that I realized I was really getting quite messed up, I had to almost press an ejector seat and like crash land. and so that was a little harsh. And I sometimes think I should be a little bit less all in, but my instinct is to be all in. I'm very committed to ideas. I'm very committed to people when I get involved with them. But I'm very happily married now. So all good in the long run, but you wonder, I wonder about that word sometimes.
Yeah, I have that tendency to I guess leap before I look. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I feel like I got enough information to make a decision. Like I'm just going for it, and you find out like, yeah, maybe you should have held back a little bit, let things develop, been a little bit more patient, and you might have identified something that stood out as a red flag. So it's a good point of view to have.
Well, but I think it's a lesson I haven't learned in lots of ways. And in some ways, again, I'm not quite sure I want to learn it, because I do like the spirit of going really for something. And I think when you're committed to it, like, I'm an entrepreneur. You can't be an entrepreneur unless you're all in. You can't have doubts. You have to think that, your product is brilliant, or whatever it is you're doing, because otherwise, who's going to buy it from you if you've got ambivalence about it, And so, and of course, that's where I find myself again with, this platform we created, Friday platform is I actually really love it. And so, I really think it's helpful, and, and I'm all in, and I think that's that. So there's a lot I love about it too. I just sometimes I have to. I
get it. Yeah. Cause like you refer to as an entrepreneur, like if you weren't, if you're going to sit back and really think about all the risks, you might, say, geez, why would I even try to attempt to do something like that? It's clearly a bad idea. But because we just go, hey, we're just going to go for it. We'll figure it out as we go. Like, okay, we get started. I love the idea around the Friday Pulse, because it's really, to me, generates this idea of this culture around being at the office on Fridays. It just feels like, hey, I'm more excited to be there. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm looking forward to the weekend. But I always felt like Fridays were like a fun day. It was a productive day. You still worked on things, but there wasn't such a seriousness about it. So, who are the types of businesses you're looking to work with ideally? Like if you said, hey, this is my ideal client, what do they look like?
So our clients tend to be a little progressive. They're interested in their people. So they probably would have a people director rather than an HR director. They're into the idea that people matter. They tend to be white collar in the sense that we tend to work better in office environments. We do have manufacturing and we do have hospitality, or we did have hospitality, but they've unfortunately not working right now. And businesses that want to work with this data and listen, they don't want to just look at it and sweep it under the carpet. Because otherwise, why are you asking? You're not respecting your employees. If you ask them something, they're not prepared to act on it. So those are the types of clients. So we don't have particular industries, though we absolutely are overrepresented in tech and in finance and things like that. But I don't think we particularly need to be. We need to have companies that are, tech savvy because we're a tech-enabled product, but they don't need to be a high-tech business. But so those are the type. It's more that they're internally interested in people. They want to develop them, help them. They want teams to flourish, and they recognize the importance of that. So tends to be slightly more creative roles. And by creative, I mean not necessarily creative industries. I mean people have to think on their feet. They have to collaborate, teamwork. Those are the ones that really get the most benefit out of it, because those are the biggest benefits from running positive, happy, productive teams. Yeah.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like the people that are already doing it, they're going to get the most out of it. And the ones that struggle and you're reluctant, they're going, hey, why isn't this working? Well, you do have to take the data and implement it and make changes.
I mean, that's actually very true in the sense that I guess I'm thinking what are our best clients to work with, but the ones that might need us most might be a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So if I'm looking to work with you, Nick, where can I find you?
Yeah, so we're fridaypulse.com is our website, and I have a personal one which is nicknok.org, and you can find us there. And actually, we are offering Friday Pulse for free at the moment to any organization up to 1,000 people. Just really in this crisis, no one is really looking to spend much money, so you may as well just come and use our platform and then see if you want to in a few months' time.
That's a big value proposition there. So definitely all that information will be in the show notes. I enjoyed having our conversation, and hopefully if you're listening out there, go connect with Mark and see what he's up to and reach out.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Cheers. Thanks for chatting.
Bye.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.